there, Virgo. Welcome to your September 2020 Astro Alchemy report. It's Raina here, and happy birthday to all Virgos who are born in September. Hey, I'll even throw in you August Virgos because I'm recording this before the sun is in the sign of Virgo. I'm recording this earlier in August, so I'm going to cover all of you's Virgos. And this is an energizing time when the transiting sun is in the same sign as your sun sign. It's just a great time to be alive. And I'm sure you're going to feel that energy to the fullest extent. The other big news are the planets that are turning direct. So we're talking about Jupiter and Saturn, but also the fact that Mars is going retrograde. I'll get to those things in a minute, but I want to just start methodically from the 2nd of September when we have a full moon at 10 degrees of Pisces. Pisces is your opposite sign. For most of you, this is going to fall in the 7th house, the opposite house of committed partnership. And this is a good time to say two things. First of all, that this is for Virgo sun and Virgo rising, and also to say that this is more of a generalized forecast because of the nature. You have to be precise when you're dealing with astrology. But you can still do it to some extent just by these general reports, as long as you keep in mind that the exact dates may not be exactly what's happening for your particular chart. I will say, though, that because the full moon is at 10 degrees of Pisces, if you're born in August, this is probably going to not be in your 7th house, but actually in your 6th house. The 6th house is a house of work. It's your daily schedule, and it's also the house of health. It's the house that Virgo rules. So for those of you who are early Virgos, this may be some developments within the workplace, whether it's ending a job or getting a promotion, because the full moon brings things to awareness, brings things to this kind of place that it can go no further at the current status. So it's like do or die type of thing. But when it has to do with your achievements, it can make them, come to their fruition if you're working on a project, or if you have been vying for some kind of promotion, you might get it. It's a culmination of that ambitious effort. So some kind of development with work. For the rest of you, this is relationship related. Now, this is following the same formula. It's coming to this, you could call it a crisis point, you could call it a point of awareness, the fruition of something. So, for instance, I would even say, I don't know if other astrologers would agree with me, but if you are married or, seriously committed to somebody, maybe you are pregnant and this is kind of sealing the deal. Or perhaps a pregnancy is making you get married. This is just something that came into my mind. I don't know if this is really how it works. Usually with the 7th house, it is going to be commitment related. So two people are not just dating, they are committed to one another, but they are going to, one person says, hey, why don't we get married, or proposes, or says, I think we should move in together, or they do move in together. In other words, it's taking it to the next level. For some people, the next level is a divorce court, seriously, this can be, for some people, the final straw. And, I'm not saying that, frivolously, but I do think that it can work either way, as you can see. When I'm talking about the sixth or seventh houses, I'm talking about areas where it can either advance something or it can end something. But it's kind of like blowing it up and making it more visible, making it more in your awareness, something that you have to focus on before you can, that you can no longer ignore in certain cases. So developments with a relationship in one way or the other. On the 5th, Mercury goes into Libra. So this is your second house of earned income. Now, this is Taurus's house in the universal chart. So this is a house that you vibe with because you're an earth sign, Virgo. So it's a practical area of life, and you excel in this area. And also, your ruler is Mercury. So it feels at home in this house in particular. And you may be really thinking about your finances. I would even say like brainstorming, trying to get things together, obviously, but also maybe coming up with ideas of what you can do, like income streams and the like, because this is a time of year, and this happens every year, where the sun goes into that house. And so the focus is on finances for Virgo sun and rising in September every year. And Mercury is leading the way with this and getting you to pay attention to it. The very next day, Venus, which is the ruler of that second house, goes into Leo, a fire sign. I really like Venus going into Leo because Leo is a very warm sign. It's very generous. Venus is very much about love, that warmth, that, the romantic side of life, which Venus has in spades. But also, Venus, because it does rule that second house, as well as the seventh house of committed partnership, but the second house with money, Venus can be about money, and Leo is a sign of abundance, or at least generosity. So to me, it's very copacetic. It's very harmonious to have these two entities coming together. And for you, this is the 12th house. So Virgo, this can have many different possibilities. One is because Venus has been in your 11th house for almost the first week of the month and coming in from August, this may be a situation where you have met somebody through your circle of friends and you want to keep it on the down low. You don't want other people in your business about this burgeoning relationship. So you kind of decide between the two of you that you're just going to be low key about it. This can also be meeting your soulmate, because the 12th house is your karmic past, which, involves past lives. And so Venus in the 12th can be soulmate material. For some people, and I'm not saying this is going to be all of you, so don't write me nasty messages and tell me that you don't cheat. I'm not saying that you would, but if you have somebody that you're interested in and either you are attached or they are, or you both are, that could be a clandestine situation where you're on the down low, you're sneaking around with your paramour. And it's very secretive, because the 12th house can be hidden things. On the 9th, Mars is going retrograde. So this is one of those big deals. I'm so happy that Mars has a relatively short transit and therefore the retrograde is relatively short, unlike some of these other planets like Jupiter and Saturn, which have been retrograding for months. So regardless of how it impacts you, whether you feel it or you don't, but especially if you do feel it, just realize that this too shall pass and relatively quickly. Mars is going direct on the 14th of November. So, it's not that serious. But, but it is going to be over 2 months. And for you, because it's Aries, we are talking about the 8th house. So Mars is our drive, and it's also our anger. It can be something connected to, it's funny, I was looking this up and I didn't see anything about the sex drive, but Mars is about the sex drive. And it is in the 8th house, which is a sex. Oh, yeah, I do see here that they talk about sexual problems. Okay. Yeah. So it's very interesting because the 8th house is a house of power. This is, in the universal chart, this is the house of Scorpio. And Scorpio is ruled by 2 planets. Mars is one of them. So Mars is the ruler of the 8th house, but also Pluto. And Pluto is especially associated with power. And Mars is associated with, our will. So the 8th house deals with matters. It's funny when I said will, because one of the areas that the 8th house deals with is shared resources and also the house of death. So when you combine death with shared money, you come up with, or other people's money, you come up with inheritance. And this is one of the areas. Now, with Mars retrograde, there may be something going on with a will that, and I don't see anything when I was looking it up. I didn't see anything specifically related to that. They talk about here, and I'm going to give a shout out to leahwhitehorse.com, which apparently is a astrology type of site. And I always like to just get like other people's take on these things before I do this kind of like with retrogrades and stuff like that. And they mentioned, or she, if it's a she, mentioned the loan that doesn't come through, the tax bill that's more than expected. So, these kinds of things that have to do with money that you owe, because the 8th house can be debts, then that could be something that is stymied. And Mars retrograde is also about feelings of frustration. So if you feel like something that you have been wanting doesn't happen, and that makes you feel impatient, because Mars can be very impatient, wanting it now. And it's in its own sign of Aries. So this just heightens that Martian energy, but especially that impatience and the rashness and all of that. That could be what you're dealing with the 8th house. Sexual issues coming to the surface, or that you should allow to come to the surface, because the 8th house is a shadow, and so the shadow part of ourselves is that which we kind of don't acknowledge. We kind of shove away under a rug, and this is the house of psychology, and it's a water house because Scorpio rules it, so it has to do with emotions, but it's psychological. It's those things that we are not acknowledging on the surface. So it's deep down, the shadow work area. But one of these areas that the 8th house represents is sex, but it's intimacy. So it doesn't have to be just sex, but also the emotional intimacy within a relationship. The reason that I'm emphasizing sex is because Mars is the planet that's retrograding here, and it is connected to sex. If you think about the Mars and Venus, remember that book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. It's really talking about those two elements of the physical desire, and the Venus is the romantic side of things. So this may be a time when sexual desire is waning for whatever reason. And for some people, it's that they don't feel that their partner desires them, or, and I would say especially if it's a partner issue. Now, I just told you about that full moon in the 7th house. So that could be related to this. Something could come to your awareness about your relationship that you realize is connected to sex. So another thing that they mention on this site are power games, and I would call them power plays, and but you could say games, I guess. And this is also, sex can be connected to that as well, where one person uses their own willingness to have sex or not have sex to feel in control of the relationship. The other person may feel like they're being jerked around, pardon the pun, so it could be one of those things. So I don't know which end of the spectrum you would be. Maybe you're the one that isn't getting any. So it's kind of interesting. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Virgo person is feeling the lack of desire, because it's your Mars that is going through that house. When Mars goes retrograde, you may feel less energy. So that's why in this particular area, it could be coming from sex, but also, even standing up for yourself. Even though this is the 8th house, this is more of the subtle power plays that are going on. And so if you've been kind of a doormat, Virgo, this may be a time when you really have to look at that and how you kind of lay down and allow somebody to walk all over you. Because sometimes we do have to, be pliable and even passive. But sometimes we have to be willing to stand up for ourselves. And I feel like this is really going to be a time of great dealing with your own shadow work more than anything else. Because with the retrograde, it's looking within. It's not like, taking that aggression and putting it on somebody else. Death as an issue. But interestingly, people always fear, when there's a transit through the 8th house, that it's going to be about physical death. I'm not talking about you, but, somebody else that you care about. And that's not always the case. It can be the death of an illusion, that you have about a situation. And that can include yourself if you are psychoanalyzing yourself, or, just digging deep within yourself. You may, this is a house of transformation. So it's really about if you want to talk about death, it's like killing illusion. And that means that you're willing to face your shadow. And that's where, because Mars can be about courage, and that takes a lot of courage to do that. And I think that Virgos have that. I think you have that within yourself to be able to do that, quite frankly. Virgos can come off as rather timid, in general, because there's not that strong sense of self. I have the moon in Virgo, and I know exactly what emotionally how that affects me, but this is your sun sign, or even if it's your rising sign, this is kind of the backbone of your chart, and that can really be a part of you. But the interesting thing about Virgo is that you have great power, a great power of analysis, and that can be applied to yourself. And you're also very realistic, pragmatic. So you're not about, you're not like your opposite sign, Pisces, where you are content to live in some deluded fantasy. You really do want to be grounded in reality. And that's very important to you. So I feel like you can make a lot of progress with this particular transit. On the 12th, Jupiter goes direct, root. I'm saying that because I have my sun in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. If you have Sagittarius rising, Virgo, then Jupiter is your ruler, so this is a significant event as well. And so for you, since Jupiter is currently in the sign of Capricorn, this is that 5th house. So this can be actually a very good thing for people who may have felt in recent months that you haven't been playing enough. Because Jupiter in the 5th house is the house of pleasure, romance, creativity. And if you are a creative person, you may have been less prolific, because Jupiter in the 5th house can give a person much more creative output than they normally would have. Jupiter is a planet of expansion. And because Jupiter, like Venus, can bring money and you could say good luck to a particular area of your life, this could be, the 5th house can be the business that you own, but even creative projects you can receive some kind of financial compensation for them. And that's really cool beans, because perhaps you have always wanted to do something like this. And now is the time where everything, like the stars, are aligning with that. But especially when Jupiter is direct. And they say that, when a planet stations retrograde or direct, that degree is a very important thing to look at. And this is at the 17-degree mark. And so as I look through my ephemeris here, that 17-degree mark is really starting in late August, around the 25th of August. So keep that in mind for those of you listening in August, that there may be some significance with even that last week of August. And then throughout the month of September, it stays at that 17-degree mark, goes direct on the 12th, but until October 1st, or October 2nd is when it goes to 18-degree mark. So for several weeks after Jupiter turns direct, it stays at that very powerful degree that it stations direct. So that's just really cool as well. And I like the number 17 as well, because that reduces to an 8 and is a number that's associated. Number 8 is associated with material wealth and power. Okay, so there is a new moon on the 17th at 25 degrees of Virgo. So looking again at what your particular, where this is going to fall for you. If you're born from 25 to 29 degrees rising, sun or rising of Virgo, this will fall in your first house. For the rest of you, this is going to fall in the 12th house. So for the majority of you, this is actually going to be a new moon in the 12th house. And you'll actually find that your new beginnings related to the new moon in the first house are more apropos around the time of October 16th, I believe it is, when the sun, when the new moon is in Libra, because this one is actually going to fall in your 12th house because it's a later degree of Virgo. And for those of you for whom it falls in the 12th house, so those of you born up until the probably the first 3 weeks of the sign of Virgo, but this is just a guesstimate. You're going to have this is like a spiritual rebirth of sorts, and it could be something that you're starting, like a new spiritual practice, or perhaps going to a new spiritual center or something along those lines. For the rest of you, the late degree Virgos, this is going to be first house, and this is about you having a whole new cycle. So that's what I'm really talking about. I'm talking about the astrological wheel, and this is wonderful. So set your intentions for the next 12 months of what you would like to manifest. And then on the 29th, Saturn goes direct at, oops, I didn't, I think it's 17 degrees of Capricorn. Oh boy, would that be really cool. Oops, oopsie daisy. What degree of Capricorn is it? Oh no, I'm off. 25 degrees of Capricorn. So this is Capricorn again. This fifth house has really gotten some action. And so definitely for those single Virgos, as soon as as Saturn entered this house, whenever that was, I'm talking about when it was in Capricorn. And so that would have been a few years ago, actually. I think it was December of 2017. You have had a situation where you were getting very serious about romance. It wasn't just fun and games, because the fifth house is the house of pleasure. It can even be recreational sex, but it can be dating. But it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily, pair up with anybody. But when Saturn went into that fifth house, you thought more seriously about the issue of dating, and maybe you were thinking about the long haul. And Saturn briefly went into Aquarius, so that would have been your sixth house. But in July, it went back into Capricorn. And now it is direct, and it will stay here for a little bit. But while it's direct, you may still be looking at getting serious about love. Maybe you kind of slacked off on that, and it wasn't really on your to-do list as much. But now you have regained that discipline about not just, dating for the sake of dating, but doing so for a serious relationship. And perhaps it has something to do with that full moon in the in Pisces. Maybe that's also connected to it. But also, it's great for the artist, because now you have Jupiter here, and now you have Saturn. So you have the discipline and the tendency to be more prolific. So that can indicate a lot of output for Virgo artists. Okay, that's what I have for you, Virgo. I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you would like a private reading, if you like how I work, I have a special going on. And this is a combination. Well, it's actually 2 separate readings, but it's for a special price, a full-length natal chart interpretation plus transits for the coming 12 months, as well as a full length tarot reading. So you get the whole enchilada, and that's the name of it. So if you follow the link below, you can read more about that and the other readings I offer. Thanks for listening to my astral podcast. Take care. Bye.